What if I told you the gods were destined to die? Not in silence, not in peace, but in fire, chaos, and war. This is Ragnarok, the final battle where even Odin falls, where Thor faces a monster that can kill a god, and where the world itself is consumed by flames. A wolf devours the Allfather, a serpent poisons the sky, and giants rise to burn everything that ever was. But this is not just the end of the gods. It's the end of everything, and the beginning of something new. Good evening, and welcome back. Tonight, we turn to one of the oldest endings ever imagined, Ragnarok, the final twilight of the gods, and the quiet beginning that follows it. We will walk through the ancient stories as they were once told, of a world slipping toward its last winter, of a battle that unravels the heavens, and of what remains when the fire has passed. You don't need to follow every detail. Let the images come and go. Let the story move around you as you rest. As always, I wonder where you are listening from, and what time the night has become for you. If you find something here worth keeping, a simple like or subscription helps this story travel a little farther. Now take a slow breath and begin. The old poets spoke of a beginning that was not truly a beginning. They called it Jormungandr, the yawning void. But it was not emptiness in any simple sense. It was something stranger, a vast in-between, a silence stretched across a place where nothing had yet found a name. On one side of this immeasurable gulf lay Niflheim, a realm of cold and drifting mist. There, a spring called Hvergelmir churned endlessly, feeding bitter rivers that slipped outward into the dark. The waters were sharp with poison, their currents slow and patient. Opposite it burned Muspelheim, a land of flame and restless heat. Sparks rose like living things, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with hunger. At its edge stood a lone guardian, Surtr, holding a blade that burned as if it had already tasted the end of the world. For an age beyond counting, nothing moved between them. Cold and fire simply remained, watching, waiting, across the silent span. Until at last something shifted. The frost began to creep outward from Niflheim. The sparks from Muspelheim drifted forward, and in the middle of that endless gap, the two met. Ice softened, heat gathered, steam rose into the first uncertain motion of existence. And from that meeting, something lived. The first being was vast. He was called Ymir. He lay in that new-formed space, both newborn and ancient, drawing the first breath the world had ever known. His body held a strange abundance, and even in sleep, life moved through him. From the warmth beneath his arms, a man and a woman emerged, giants formed not by will, but by presence. From the slow friction of his feet, another son came into being. From a single body, a people began. The frost giants spread outward into the emptiness, older than the gods who would one day rise to oppose them. Yet Ymir was not alone. From the melting ice stepped another creature, quiet, immense, and patient. A great cow, Audhumla. Her body was broad and steady, her breath warm against the cold. From her udders flowed four rivers of milk, and it was this simple nourishment that sustained the giant. While Ymir fed and dreamed, she turned to the ice itself. Day after day, she licked the frozen salt, and slowly, something revealed itself. On the first day, a strand of hair. On the second, a head emerging from the frost. On the third, a man stood free. His name was Buri. He was the first of the gods. From him came a line that would shape everything that followed. Buri's son Bor took a giantess as his wife, Bestla, and from that union came three sons, Odin, Vili, and Ve. From the beginning, the boundary between god and giant was never pure. The blood of enemies flowed in both. The world at this time was unfinished, raw, like a workshop after the first strikes of a hammer, forms half-made, edges unshaped. Ymir and his kind filled the growing space of Jormungandr, multiplying without restraint, and the young gods watched. The old stories do not fully explain what came next, only that it had to happen. Perhaps the giants had grown too many. Perhaps Ymir himself had become too vast for a world still forming. Or perhaps every world requires a first violence, a shaping act that cannot be undone. Odin and his brothers rose. The battle is not described in detail. Only fragments remain, echoes of force, of a being too great brought down by something greater still. Ymir fell, and when he did, his blood poured out in such volume that it drowned nearly all of his kin. Only one survived, Bergelmir. He and his wife climbed onto something that floated, a hollow shape, perhaps wood, perhaps chance, and rode the flood as it consumed everything else. It is an image that returns across many stories. A world lost in water, a few carried forward. From the body of the fallen giant, the gods began to build. Not from nothing, but from what remained. His flesh became the earth. His blood became seas, rivers, and lakes. His bones rose into mountains. His teeth and broken fragments scattered into stones. From his skull they shaped the sky, a vast dome above the world, and at its four corners they placed dwarves to hold it in place. Nordri, Sudri, Ostri, and Vestri, names carried on the winds. Light came from elsewhere. The gods reached into Muspelheim and gathered sparks of fire, placing them across the heavens as stars. They set two greater lights in motion, one to rule the day, Sol, one to guide the night, Mani. But even here, fate moved quietly beneath creation. Two wolves were set in pursuit. Skoll chased the sun, Hati chased the moon. And so, from the beginning, the end was already written, each day a running toward a final catching. From Ymir's thoughts, the last remnants of his mind, the gods shaped the clouds. From his brows, they raised a great barrier. Midgard, the middle world, a place for humankind. Inside it, order was attempted. Outside it, chaos remained. Beyond this new world, others took form. Realms layered upon realms. Asgard, home of the gods. Vanaheim, tied to fertility and the sea. Jotunheim, where giants endured. Niflheim, cold and distant. Muspelheim, forever burning. Alfheim, bright with light elves. And deep below, darker halls where dwarves worked stone and metal. At the roots of everything lay Hell, a realm not of fire, but of quiet endings. All of it bound together by a single living structure. Yggdrasil, the world tree. Its branches stretched across the heavens. Its trunk stood at the center of existence. Its roots reached into places no one fully understood. At one root lay the well of Urd, where the Norns gathered. At another, the well of Mimir, deep with wisdom. At the third, in the cold depths, the dragon Nidhogg gnawed endlessly. The Norns, Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld tended the tree. Past, present, future. They watered its bark with sacred water and pale clay, keeping it from decay. And they carved the fates of all beings, not only men, but gods. Beneath the tree, the world never rested. The dragon fed on the dead. An eagle watched from above. Between them, the squirrel Ratatoskr carried words, sharp, restless, never kind. Deer fed on the leaves. Serpents twisted through the roots. Everything lived. Everything consumed. Everything moved toward something not yet spoken. And far ahead, though no one could yet see it clearly, the end was already waiting. Even the great tree that bound all things together was never free from strain. Its roots were gnawed, its branches burdened, and its very being caught in a quiet struggle against decay. The worlds were linked, yes, but those links were never peaceful. They carried tension, imbalance, and constant pressure beneath the surface. Once the realms of gods and giants had taken form, the divine rulers turned their focus towards something smaller, more fragile, life within Midgard. Along a lonely shore, they found two pieces of driftwood, shaped by the sea and time. One came from an ash tree, the other from an elm. They were lifeless, hollow things worn smooth by waves. Yet in the hands of the gods, they became something more. Odin breathed life into them, filling their still forms with the first spark of existence. Vili granted them awareness, the ability to think and move with intention. Vi shaped their appearance, gave them voices, senses, and even clothing, turning them into beings who could walk the world and name it. The man was called Ask, the woman Embla. They were placed within Midgard, inside the protective boundary formed from Ymir's brow, a fragile sanctuary beneath a sky made from bone, above land shaped from flesh. It was a world already governed by unseen forces, where the Norns had begun weaving fate long before humanity's first breath. Ask and Embla were never meant to rule this world. They were brief, delicate flames in an ancient and indifferent universe. Their survival depended on the thin safety of Midgard's walls and the uncertain favor of gods who themselves were not immune to fate. In this vision, you can feel the reality behind the myth. The people who told these stories lived close to hardship, where cold, hunger, and storm were never far away. Beyond the safety of village or hearth lay a world that could destroy without warning. Midgard reflects that fear, a small circle of order surrounded by endless chaos. Above this human realm stood Asgard, the high stronghold of the gods. Later storytellers like Snorri Sturluson described it as a place of great halls and shining structures. Odin's throne stood in Valaskjaf, where he could see across all worlds. Thor's hall, Bilskirnir, stretched vast and mighty, fitting for a god of thunder and strength. Freya's domain welcomed the fallen, sharing in the fate of warriors who died in battle. But Asgard was no perfect paradise. It had walls because it needed protection. It had alliances because it faced threats. The gods themselves were powerful, but flawed. Odin the Allfather was wise but restless. His hunger for knowledge drove him to sacrifice deeply. He gave one of his eyes for wisdom and hung from the world tree for 9 nights, wounded and alone, to gain the secrets of the runes. He sent his ravens across the worlds, always searching, always watching, as if trying to understand a fate he could not escape. Thor, his son, was strength made flesh. He carried his hammer, which always returned to him, and wore a belt that doubled his power. He stood as the defender of Midgard, especially for those who lived by land and sea. When storms gathered, it was Thor they trusted. And yet, even Thor could be tricked. Strength alone was never enough. Near the sea stood Njord, a god tied to wind, water, and wealth. His children, Freyr and Freya, carried powers of fertility, prosperity, and desire. Freya, in particular, held a dual nature, connected to love and beauty, yet also to death, taking her share of fallen warriors. Other gods filled the halls of Asgard: Tyr, who would sacrifice his hand; Heimdall, the ever-watchful guardian; Frigg, who knew fate but rarely spoke of it. All of them lived with the quiet knowledge that their end was already written. Even peace among the gods came at a cost. There had once been a war between the Aesir and the Vanir. It began with suspicion and fear, sparked by a mysterious figure named Gulvig, burned again and again, yet never destroyed. Conflict followed. Weapons shattered walls, and neither side could claim victory. So they made peace. Hostages were exchanged. Njord and his children came to Asgard. In return, the Aesir sent Honir and the wise Mimir. But distrust remained. When the Vanir felt deceived, they killed Mimir and sent his head back. Odin preserved it, using its wisdom even in death. From shared sacrifice and uneasy trust, a fragile balance formed. Between Asgard and Midgard stretched Bifrost, the burning bridge, beautiful like a rainbow, yet dangerous and unstable. It carried the gods across realms, but it was never meant to last forever. One day, it would break beneath the weight of chaos. Heimdall stood watch there, silent and tireless. And when the end came, his horn would sound across all worlds, a signal that nothing could escape. If you step back and look at this universe as a whole, a pattern emerges. Everything exists in tension. Gods and giants share blood, yet remain enemies. The human world survives only within fragile borders. Even the tree that holds existence together is slowly being destroyed. Time itself is hunted, chased across the sky by wolves that will one day catch their prey. This was not a world of certainty or safety. It was a world shaped by conflict, sustained by effort, and destined for collapse. And at the center of its uncertainty stood Loki. No one could fully define him. He was a companion of Odin, yet never truly one of the gods. His origins were older, stranger. His father linked to destructive force, his mother to something softer, more fleeting. He existed between categories, never fixed, never fully understood. Loki was clever, beautiful, and dangerously quick-minded. A shapeshifter who could become anything: fly, fish, woman, beast. Where others followed their nature, Loki escaped it. This made him valuable and terrifying. Odin relied on his cunning when strength was not enough. Loki could solve problems others could not, but he could also create them just as easily. Among the gods, he was tolerated, but never trusted. Thor, more than most, understood this. Again and again, Loki helped him and betrayed him. Because in a world already filled with cracks, Loki was the one who knew exactly where to press. There are many tales where Loki stands at the center of trouble, sometimes as the cause, sometimes as the solution. Often, he creates chaos only to step forward moments later as its savior, as if he takes pleasure in playing both destroyer and rescuer in the same breath. At the feasts of the gods, his sharp tongue becomes his weapon. He delights in unraveling reputations, exposing secrets, and twisting truths just enough to wound. In the old poem known as Lokasenna, he turns a gathering into a battlefield of words, insulting each god in turn until he is finally cast out. Yet what makes his words so dangerous is not their exaggeration, but how close they come to truth. Loki sees clearly. He knows exactly where each god is weakest. To understand how deeply Loki is woven into the life of Asgard, you must also see how often his mischief leads to creations the gods come to depend on. When a mysterious builder appears and offers to construct an impenetrable wall around Asgard in a single season, the price he asks is outrageous: the sun, the moon, and the goddess Freya. The gods hesitate. It is Loki who convinces them to accept, certain the task cannot be completed in time. But the builder has a secret: his powerful stallion, tireless and strong, doing most of the labor. As the deadline approaches and success seems possible, panic spreads among the gods. Once again, Loki must act. Transforming himself into a mare, he lures the stallion away into the night, disrupting the work. The builder, revealed in his rage as a giant in disguise, is slain by the gods. But Loki's interference does not end there. From his time in that strange form, he later gives birth to an extraordinary foal, 8-legged, swift beyond measure. This creature becomes Odin's horse, Sleipnir, capable of traveling between worlds. In another tale, Loki's mischief turns more personal. He cuts off the golden hair of Sif, Thor's wife. Whether as a cruel joke or something deeper is never fully clear. Thor's fury is immediate and terrifying, and Loki is forced to promise a solution or face destruction. He descends into the underground halls of the dwarves, master craftsmen of impossible skill. There, through cunning and wagers, he secures not only new golden hair for Sif, hair that grows as if alive, but also other treasures. For Odin, they forge the spear Gungnir, which never misses its mark. For Freyr, a ship called Skidbladnir, which can be folded into a small pouch, yet carry countless warriors when opened. And for Thor, the hammer Mjolnir, short-handled but unmatched in power. All of these wonders exist because Loki first caused a problem. The world of the gods becomes stronger, richer, and more dangerous through his interference. And yet, beneath the humor of these stories, something darker lingers. Loki rarely acts out of loyalty. He is driven by curiosity, by a restless urge to see what happens when balance is disturbed. He pushes the world just slightly out of place, and watches what follows. And when his actions bring him too close to punishment, fear takes over. He lies, transforms, flatters, anything to escape. But consequences do not disappear. They gather. This uneasy balance, ally and enemy, helper and destroyer, deepens when Loki begins a family of his own, far from the ordered halls of Asgard. In the east, within a forest of iron trees where the ground is tangled with ancient roots and rusted remnants of forgotten battles, lives a giantess named Angrboda, the bringer of sorrow. She is not gentle, not welcoming. She belongs to darker stories, a figure of strength and inevitability, whose presence feels more like a warning than a person. With her, Loki fathers 3 children. They are not ordinary beings. They are not even truly children in any human sense, but living forces of destruction. The first is a wolf, Fenrir. At birth, he is no larger than a hound, but he grows rapidly. Each day his body expands, his jaws widen, his strength multiplies. His eyes burn with intelligence, and something colder, sharper, a reflection of Loki's own cunning. The second is a serpent, Jormungandr, the world serpent. At first, small enough to be contained, but growing endlessly. His scales harden, his body lengthens, until he becomes something vast beyond comprehension. The third is a daughter, Hel. Her body is divided in a way that defies nature. One side appears alive, pale and still. The other is dark, lifeless, marked by decay. She exists between states, neither fully living nor fully dead. When word of these children reaches the gods, unease spreads. Odin listens, and Odin understands. He knows that prophecy and blood are never separate. So he seeks knowledge, and what he learns confirms his fears. These beings are tied to the end of all things. The wolf will one day devour Odin himself. The serpent will rise against Thor, poisoning the world. The girl will rule over the dead, holding them in her silent domain. These are not threats that can be ignored. So Odin acts, as he always does, with harsh resolve. The children are taken, not destroyed, but placed, each in a realm where the gods believe they can be controlled. The serpent is cast into the great ocean that surrounds Midgard. There it grows, and grows, until its body encircles the entire world, forming a ring beneath the sea, biting its own tail, waiting. The image is terrifying yet fitting. For the sea itself, in Norse thought, is something unknowable. Ever present, calm one moment, deadly the next. Hel is sent downward, to the cold, shadowed realm that will bear her name. There, she becomes ruler of the dead who do not fall in battle. Her hall is vast but grim, filled with symbols of hunger, illness, and quiet suffering. A kingdom without warmth, without joy, only stillness. And then there is Fenrir. He remains, among the gods. At first, they believe this is safer, to keep him close, to watch him grow. But as the years pass, it becomes clear that they have not controlled the danger. They have raised it. Fenrir grows into something immense. His footsteps shake the ground. His jaws could swallow a god. When he opens his mouth, it is said one half reaches the earth, the other the sky. And still he watches. Only one god dares approach him without fear. Tyr, the god of law, of oaths, of honor. He feeds the wolf, stands beside him, builds a bond that feels almost like trust. But even this connection carries a shadow, because Tyr understands what must eventually be done. The gods begin to admit what they had hoped to deny. Fenrir cannot be controlled, and Odin remembers the prophecy. This wolf is his end. Perhaps he wonders if fate can be changed, if action now might prevent what is written. But in these stories, attempts to escape fate often become the very path that leads to it. So the gods decide to bind Fenrir. Not openly, not by force, but through deception. They craft a great chain, heavy and strong, and bring it to the wolf as if it were a game. A test of strength, a challenge. Fenrir studies them. He understands more than they think. But still, he allows it. The chain is placed around him. For a moment, everything is still. Then, with a single surge of power, he breaks it, as easily as snapping a dry branch. The gods exchange glances, masking their unease behind forced admiration. They speak of Fenrir's strength as if it is something to celebrate, though beneath their voices lies a rising fear. Quietly, they withdraw and set to work again, forging a second chain, stronger, heavier, more unforgiving. They name it Dromi. Once more, they return to the wolf with smiles and light words, presenting the binding as nothing more than another test of strength, a challenge worthy of legend. Fenrir watches them closely. He hears the pride in their tone, and perhaps the tension beneath it. Still confident in his growing power, he allows the chain to be placed upon him. This time, the restraint holds longer. The iron groans. It bites into his fur. For a moment, it seems as though it might endure. But Fenrir surges. With a violent twist of muscle and force, he breaks it apart. The chain snaps, fragments scattering across the ground. The sound echoes through the air. The gods laugh again, too loudly, too quickly. And now they understand. No ordinary force will ever be enough. So they turn to the dwarves, those secretive masters of craft who shape impossible things in the hidden places beneath the world. What they ask for is no simple weapon or tool, but something beyond the nature of iron and strength. The dwarves listen, and they agree. What they create does not look like a chain at all. They call it Gleipnir. It is thin, soft, almost delicate, more like a ribbon than a binding. Smooth to the touch, light as silk. Yet it is forged from things that cannot truly be grasped, things that do not belong to the solid world. They name its ingredients with quiet pride: the sound of a cat's footsteps, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, the spit of a bird. These are things no one can find because, as the tale says, they were all used in the making of Gleipnir. It is a poetic way of saying that this binding is woven from absence, from the unseen edges of reality itself. A chain made not of strength, but of impossibility. With it in their hands, the gods travel to a remote island called Lyngvi, set within a lake surrounded by steep, silent shores. There, they summon Fenrir once again. They carry the ribbon lightly, as if it were nothing. But Fenrir is not fooled. His gaze sharpens as he studies it. There is something wrong in its softness, something that feels deeper than iron. The gods speak casually, urging him to prove his strength once more. Surely, if he could shatter Dromi, this thin band should offer no challenge at all. But Fenrir hesitates. He has grown among them. He has learned their ways. He knows how they smile when they are not telling the truth. The more harmless Gleipnir appears, the more dangerous it feels. So he sets a condition. If this is truly a game, if they mean no deceit, then one of them must place a hand inside his mouth as a pledge. When he breaks free, he will release it unharmed. But if they lie, if this is a trap, then the hand will be the price. Silence falls. The gods look at one another. None move. To place a hand within the jaws of Fenrir is to gamble with life itself. Then at last one steps forward. Tyr, the same god who fed the wolf. The one who stood closest to him. The one who built trust where others only watched. Without hesitation, Tyr raises his hand and places it between Fenrir's jaws. In that moment, everything rests on faith. The gods move quickly, wrapping Gleipnir around the wolf's body, binding his limbs. Then they give the signal. Fenrir pulls. He strains, claws tearing into the earth beneath him. Muscles coil and surge as he throws his full strength against the binding. But Gleipnir does not break. Instead, it tightens. The more he fights, the stronger it holds. The gods anchor it deep into the ground, securing it with heavy stones, driving its ends into the earth itself. And then, Fenrir understands. This is no test. This is betrayal. Tyr does not move. His arm remains where it was placed. A promise is a promise, even now. And in that moment, Fenrir's jaws snap shut. Tyr's hand is severed. Blood falls to the ground, marking the cost of the god's decision. The god of oaths has paid for this binding with his own flesh. From that day forward, he stands among them one-handed, a living reminder of what was done. Fenrir howls. The sound carries across the worlds, a cry filled with fury, pain, and something deeper, something that will not fade. The gods, fearing his bite, force a sword into his mouth. The hilt presses down his lower jaw. The blade holds the upper apart, leaving him unable to close it. From his mouth flows blood and foam, forming a river that runs from that place. A detail the old stories give a name, as if even this could not remain ordinary. Bound, silenced, but not ended. The gods leave him there, and in that moment, the truth of their actions cuts both ways. They have protected themselves and the world from a being destined to destroy them. But they have also betrayed one they raised among them. They have broken trust, and in doing so, they have deepened the hatred that now burns within Fenrir. When Ragnarok comes, his rage will not be sudden. It will be ancient, fed by years of helplessness, of chains that could not be broken, of pain that could not be answered. And somewhere Loki watches. The stories do not always say what he feels. Whether he laughs, shrugs, or hides his anger behind a mask of indifference. But his children are scattered, one cast into the sea, one chained to the earth, one sent into the realm of the dead, each transformed into a force of fate. For a time, Loki remains in Asgard, still smiling, still clever, still solving problems that he helped create. But something has changed. Now, his blood runs through three powers that touch every corner of existence: the sea, death, and destruction. When the Northern seers spoke of Ragnarok, they did not describe a simple battle between good and evil. They spoke of a reckoning, a collision between those who built order and those who were cast aside to protect it. Loki and his children stand at the center of that storm, and the gods will not only face their enemies, but the consequences of their own choices. Amid all this, within the shining halls of Asgard, there is one figure untouched by fear: Baldur. The old poems call him the best of the gods. In his presence, nothing impure is spoken. He is described as radiant, his very being bringing calm to those around him. Where Odin represents thought and Thor embodies strength, Baldur is something gentler, hope perhaps. A reminder that even in a harsh world, something pure can exist. He is the son of Odin and Frigg, and in him they both see something worth protecting. Odin, who has sacrificed so much to understand fate, may look upon Baldur and believe that not all is lost, that even in a world born from violence, there can be light. Frigg, who knows many things yet rarely speaks them, surely feels a quieter burden, the fear that knowledge cannot prevent what is to come. For a long time, life continues. The gods feast, argue, travel, and fight. Giants wait beyond the edges. Humans live and struggle in Midgard. Loki moves through it all, smiling as ever. Fenrir remains bound. The serpent coils beneath the sea. Hell rules in silence. And then, Baldur begins to dream. Not ordinary dreams, but heavy visions that return night after night. He sees shadows closing in. He feels himself falling, growing cold, fading into stillness. Sometimes there are flames, sometimes darkness, sometimes distant howls, but always the same certainty. Something is coming. Baldur is not weak. He is no stranger to the dangers of this world. But these dreams are different. They cannot be fought. They return each night, patient and unyielding. And in time, even the bravest spirit begins to bend under such weight. So Baldur goes before the gods and tells them what he has seen. There is concern among them, but also something else, a quiet frustration, because this is not an enemy they can strike down. And for the first time, even the gods are faced with something they do not know how to fight. A dream is not something you can strike with a weapon. It cannot be cut, burned, or driven back by force. And so, when Baldur speaks, the gods find themselves facing something unfamiliar, something that does not yield to strength or strategy. Odin listens more closely than any of them. He understands that dreams are not always born from the mind alone. They can rise from deeper places, from the roots of the world tree, from whispers carried by the dead, from forces that move long before they are seen. This, he knows, is no simple nightmare born of restless sleep. Something is stirring beneath the surface of the world. In the old sources, a poem remains, Baldur's Drömmar, the dreams of Baldur. In it, Odin chooses to act in the only way he knows how. He prepares Sleipnir, his eight-legged steed, and rides out from Asgard. But his path is not upward into the sky. It leads downward, into the shadowed regions where the dead lie waiting. He travels far, until he reaches an ancient burial mound, a grave raised long ago for a seeress who once spoke truths others feared to hear. Offerings still lie around it, but they feel empty now. Gestures made by the living who want comfort, not truth. Odin dismounts. He walks around the grave, speaking words not meant for ordinary ears, old, hidden words that reach into places where silence is supposed to remain. The earth shifts. Slowly, unwillingly, the dead woman rises. She has no desire to speak, no wish to return. But Odin has called, and Odin does not accept silence when answers are within reach. They speak. At first, Odin hides his name, calling himself something else. He asks her why the halls of hell are being prepared, why benches are covered, why cups are polished, why everything seems ready for a guest. The seeress answers plainly, they are preparing for Baldur. Each question Odin asks is an attempt to delay the truth, to push it further away, as if refusing it might weaken it. But each answer brings it closer, until finally the dead woman speaks his name, Odin, and tells him there is no escape. Baldur will die. Then she sinks back into the earth, leaving Odin alone with knowledge he cannot change. Even he, who has sacrificed so much to understand fate, rides back with less certainty than before. When Frigg hears what has been foretold, she refuses to accept it. She is not like Odin. She does not seek answers in darkness or bargain with fate. She is a mother, and if the world itself threatens her son, then she will speak to the world. She calls upon everything that exists, not just gods, not just creatures, everything, stone and metal, fire and water, sickness and poison, trees, animals, and unseen forces. One by one, she asks them to swear an oath, that they will not harm Baldur. And they agree. Every element, every being, every force in existence gives its word. When this is done, the gods gather in a wide field, a place where decisions are made, where truths are tested. Baldur stands at the center, calm, unarmed, unafraid. The others form a circle around him, and then they begin. One by one, they throw objects at him. Stones strike his body and fall away as if they had hit nothing. Spears glance off without leaving a mark. Even Thor steps forward, casting his hammer with care. It strikes Baldur, and rebounds harmlessly. Laughter rises. Not cruel laughter, but the kind that comes from relief. From the belief that, for once, fate has been outmaneuvered. That they have found a place where nothing bad can happen. Prophecy, it seems, has been turned into a game. And while they laugh, something else watches. Loki. He had not known of these oaths before. But now that he sees this strange invulnerability, curiosity takes hold. His mind moves where others refuse to look. He begins to wonder, is there a flaw, a small gap, a single thing that was overlooked? And with that thought comes another. What would happen if that flaw were found? Disguising himself as an old woman, Loki approaches Frigg. It is a form he favors when seeking answers, harmless, unthreatening, easily overlooked. Frigg welcomes the visitor. They speak. The old woman expresses wonder at Baldur's invulnerability, asking how such a thing could be possible. Frigg, pleased, and perhaps a little proud, explains what she has done. Every being, every substance, has sworn not to harm her son. The question comes naturally. Everything. There is a pause. And then, Frigg admits it. There was one thing she did not ask. A small plant. Mistletoe. It seemed too young, too insignificant to matter. Loki leaves at once. His thoughts move quickly now, sharp and precise. He finds the plant. Mistletoe, strange, rootless, living off other trees, neither fully part of them nor entirely separate. A quiet thing, easily ignored. He cuts a piece, shapes it, whether into a dart, a spear, or simply a sharpened branch, it does not matter. What matters is this. It is the only thing in existence that made no promise. Back in the field, the game continues. The gods laugh and throw, enjoying the illusion of safety. And there, standing apart, is Hodr, Baldr's brother, strong but blind. He hears the laughter, senses the movement, but cannot see what is happening. He stands on the edge of the circle, excluded from the moment. Loki approaches him. His voice is light, encouraging. Why do you not join them? Hodr answers simply. He cannot see. He has nothing to throw. Loki offers help. He places the mistletoe in Hodr's hand, guides his arm, promises to direct the throw. There is no malice in Hodr, no awareness of what is about to happen. He trusts the voice beside him. He throws. The small weapon flies. Straight. True. And it strikes Baldr in the chest. This time, there is no laughter, only a quiet, terrible sound. The mistletoe pierces him where nothing else could. And in that instant, the prophecy is fulfilled. Baldr falls. Silence follows. Heavy, unreal. The gods stare, unable to understand what has just happened. They are beings of war, of death, but not like this. Not here. Frigg cries out. Odin feels the weight of knowledge confirmed. Hodr stands frozen, unaware of what he has done. And Loki is already gone. What follows is not battle, but grief. The gods prepare a funeral unlike any other. They bring forth a great ship, Ringhorni, the largest ever made. It is to serve as Baldr's pyre. But it is so vast that even the gods cannot move it. So they call upon a giantess, Hyrrokin. She arrives riding a wolf, serpents serving as reins. With a single push, she sends the ship into the water. The force shakes the earth. Fire bursts from beneath the keel. Baldr is placed upon the deck. His wife, Nanna, overcome with sorrow, dies beside him and is laid at his side. His horse is brought aboard, fully equipped, ready to follow him into death. Thor raises his hammer. He blesses the pyre, a gesture that in this world binds together destruction and sanctity. As the flames rise, a dwarf named Licha crosses his path, or stands where he should not. Thor, lost in grief and anger, strikes him, casting him into the fire. Even in mourning, violence remains. The ship burns. Smoke rises into the sky. And still, the gods search for a way to undo what has been done. Because in this world, the dead do not all go to the same place. Some are taken to halls of glory. Others descend into hell. And Baldr has gone there. Frigg asks if anyone will ride into the realm of death and plead for his return. There is silence. Then one steps forward. Hermod, Odin's son. He takes Sleipnir and rides, for 9 nights, through darkness deeper than any living man has seen, toward the gates of the dead. At last, his journey brings him to the river Joel, its dark waters flowing beneath a bridge said to gleam with gold. The structure rises strangely in that bleak place, as if something bright had been set deliberately against the gloom. Guarding it stands a maiden, watchful and still. When Hermod approaches, she pauses, struck by the sound of his arrival. The echo of Sleipnir's hooves rings louder than it should, as though more than one rider travels with him. It is not just a man crossing into death's domain. It is the weight of grief, hope, and desperation carried in a single heartbeat. He does not linger. Riding onward, he reaches the gates of Hell's domain. They stand tall and silent, unmoving as fate itself. But Hermod does not ask entry. Instead, Sleipnir gathers himself and leaps, clearing the gates in a single bound. It is not defiance, but something close. A quiet declaration that he comes not as one who belongs, but as one who dares to return. Inside, the air is heavy. Hell's hall stretches wide and dim, vast tables lined beneath a ceiling that seems to press downward. The cold there is not the sharp bite of winter, but something deeper, like damp wool laid across the soul. And there, seated in a place of honor, yet shadowed by death, is Balder. Pale, untouched by decay, but no longer part of the living world. Hermod remains through the night. When morning comes, he stands before Hel herself. She listens, her presence calm, measured, untouched by the urgency in his voice. When she answers, it is not cruel, but neither is it kind. Balder may return, she says, but only under one condition. Everything in existence must weep for him. Not only gods, not only men, not only beasts. Every stone, every branch, every breath of wind. If all creation mourns him, then it will prove that he is truly beloved beyond all doubt. But if even one being refuses, then he must remain. There is no argument. Hermod returns to Asgard carrying this fragile hope. And at once, the gods send their messengers across the worlds. What follows is something rare, a moment where all existence seems to feel as one. Men weep openly, women bow their heads, beasts cry out in their own ways. Birds fall silent between their songs. Fire crackles like quiet sorrow. Metal rings with a hollow tone. Trees loosen their leaves as though shedding tears. Even stones gather moisture upon their surface, as if the earth itself cannot hold its grief. For a brief moment, the world is united. But it is not enough. The messengers come at last to a cave, deep and shadowed, where a giantess sits alone. Her name is Thok. When they speak of Balder and ask for her tears, she does not hesitate. Her eyes remain dry. "Let Hel keep what she has," she says coldly. "Balder gave me no joy. I owe him nothing." The words fall like a blade, and though no proof is given, suspicion lingers. Many believe this is no true giantess, but Loki, hidden once again behind another face. Whether true or not, the result is the same. One refusal is enough. The condition is broken. Balder remains in Hel. When the gods hear this, there is no outcry, only understanding. A door is closed, and it will not open again. Not in this age. Their brightest light is gone. He will sit in Hel's hall until the end of all things, until the world itself is remade. And in Asgard something empties. A silence settles where laughter once lived. But grief does not remain still for long. It turns. It searches for somewhere to land. Odin's gaze falls upon Hodr, the blind god whose hand cast the fatal strike. In some tellings, vengeance comes swiftly. Odin fathers another son, Vale, born for a single purpose. He grows in a single day and kills Hodr. Violence answers violence. Yet even this feels hollow, because Hodr was never the mind behind the act. That shadow belongs to Loki. Time passes, but resentment does not fade. It festers, until one night, in the hall of the sea giant Aegir, it finally breaks. There, during a great feast, Loki stands among the gods and begins to speak, not in jest, but in venom. He hurls insults, one after another, dragging buried truths and old shames into the open. No one is spared. The hall, once filled with warmth, turns sharp and cold. At last, the gods rise against him. Weapons are drawn, and Loki flees. He retreats into the mountains, building a house with 4 doors, so that he may see danger from every direction. By day, he hides in the rivers, taking the form of a salmon, swift and elusive. But even in hiding, his mind never rests. He weaves cords together, experimenting with patterns, creating something new. A net. Then, sensing the gods drawing near, he burns it, Too late. Odin sees what remains. From ash, he understands. The gods craft their own net. They go to the river, and they wait. Loki moves quickly, too quickly for most, but not for all. At the far end of the stream stands Thor. When the salmon leaps, trying to escape, Thor's hand closes around it midair. He grips Loki by the tail, and from that moment on, they say, salmon have never been quite the same. Captured, Loki is bound, not gently. The gods take him to a cave. There, cruelty deepens. They bring his sons. In one telling, their names are Narfi and Vale. One is transformed into a wolf, driven into madness. And in that frenzy, he tears his brother apart. From the remains, the gods fashion bonds. They tie Loki to 3 stones, shoulders, waist, and legs held fast. The cords become iron, unbreakable. Above him, they place a serpent. From its fangs, venom drips, slow and endless. It burns where it lands. But Loki is not alone. His wife, Sijin, remains beside him. She holds a bowl above his face, catching the poison drop by drop. For long stretches, she does not move. But no one can hold forever. When the bowl fills, she must turn away. And in that brief moment, the venom falls. Loki writhes in agony, his body shaking against the chains so violently that the earth itself trembles. And far above, people feel it. They call it earthquakes. So he remains there, bound beneath the world he helped break. The echo of his son's death in his ears, pain marking every passing moment. Above him, the world continues, but it is no longer the same. Balder is gone. The wolf waits. The great serpent sleeps at the edge of the world, and deep below, hatred endures, cold, patient, unending. Balder's death did not end everything at once. Life goes on. The gods still walk in Asgard. Thor still defends its borders. In Midgard, men still harvest, build, and tell stories beneath dim firelight. But something has shifted, like a stone cast into still water. The ripples begin. At first, they are small, barely noticed, but they spread, and they will not stop. The old seeress spoke of this long ago, of a time when bonds break, when brothers turn against brothers, when the world enters an age of axes and swords, of wolves and wind. To understand that fear, you must understand winter, not as a season, but as a test. In the north, winter was survival itself, a measure of every choice made in warmer days. If stores were full, life continued. If not, death came quietly. Snow could imprison entire settlements. Ice could silence the sea. Hunger could hollow out even the strongest. So when they spoke of the great winter, Fimbulwinter, they were not inventing horror. They were extending reality beyond hope. 3 winters, no summer between them. The sun rises but gives no warmth. Snow falls without rest. The winds never settle. Rivers freeze solid enough to carry armies, but no armies march. Because survival becomes everything. Food disappears. Game vanishes. Fires grow weaker. And slowly, something deeper begins to break. Not just bodies, but bonds. In those years, it is said, brother will kill brother. Children will turn against their parents. Not always from hatred, but from hunger. Because when nothing is left to share, even blood becomes a burden. Law fades. Order collapses. The gatherings where disputes were once settled, the thing, lose meaning. What is silver when it cannot be eaten? What is justice when tomorrow is not promised? And so the world begins to unravel. Not in fire, not yet, but in cold, in silence, in the slow breaking of everything that once held it together. Why should an oath still matter when your children are crying in the dark? That question lingers at the heart of every story about the long winter. Even the saga writers, men who lived centuries after these myths were first spoken, carried the memory of such times. They wrote of winters so harsh that people boiled strips of leather just to soften them enough to chew, of bark ground into flour, of quiet footsteps in the night, when desperation drove neighbors to steal from neighbors. Fimbulwinter is not simply a myth. It is memory stretched into legend, a vision of what happens when cold does not just touch the land, but breaks the order of human life. A world where hunger strips away law, kindness, and kinship alike. But the coming of Ragnarok is not written only in empty stomachs. It is written in the sky. From the earliest days, wolves have chased the sun and the moon. Skoll runs after the blazing chariot of the sun, never tiring. Hati follows the pale and silent path of the moon. Day after day they close the distance, step by step, moving across the strange upper sky where their breath turns to frost. At every sunset, at every eclipse, there is a moment when it almost happens. When jaws nearly close, when light nearly vanishes, and then returns. But during the long years of Fimbulwinter, something changes. The chase grows shorter. The distance shrinks. People in Midgard begin to notice. Even on clear days, the light feels weaker. The warmth fades too quickly. Shadows stretch longer than they should. And then, one day, Skoll catches the sun. There is no thunder, no great explosion, no warning, only the simple, terrible image of a mouth closing and the light going out. Day ends where it should have continued. Darkness falls too soon, and the cold that follows is deeper than any winter. It is not weather, it is absence. If fires still burn in distant halls, they feel small, fragile, as though they could be swallowed next. Soon after, Hati finds the moon. His jaws close just as easily, and the gentle light that once guided hunters, sailors, and wanderers through the night is gone forever. For a brief time, the stars remain, scattered sparks in an endless black sky. But even they do not last. One by one they fade. It is as if the skull of Ymir, the ancient giant whose bones became the sky, has begun to crack. The great dome above the world no longer holds. And as the heavens fail, new sounds rise from below. Near the halls of Valhalla, where the chosen dead train endlessly for battles they believed were only ritual, a rooster cries out. His name is Gullinkambie, Golden Comb, but his voice is not gentle. It cuts through the air like a blade. Perched high above the warriors, he calls out, not a greeting, but a warning. The Einarjar pause. They do not yet understand, but they feel it. Their hands tighten around their weapons. Elsewhere, in the lands of the giants, another rooster answers. Darker, rougher. Its cry echoes through cliffs and black forests, stirring ancient hatred. The enemies of the gods awaken, their long patience finally ending. And deep below, in the cold halls of hell, a third rooster stirs. Some say its feathers glow like embers, red as fire beneath ash. Its call wakes the dead, not gently but sharply. Old wounds reopen, old grudges rise. Those who had settled into silence now remember rage. These three cries form a rhythm, not chaos, but a summons. The warriors of Valhalla realize their training was never just for honor. It was for war. The giants feel their strength return. The dead prepare for one last struggle. And through it all, the great tree, Yggdrasil, begins to tremble. From root to crown, it shudders. The dragon below gnaws harder than ever before. The squirrel that runs along its trunk carries sharper insults, faster than before. The deer that graze its leaves pull back in fear as the branches sway. At the well beneath, the Norns remain. They still pour water and white clay upon the roots, trying to preserve what they once shaped. But even they know, fate, once carved, cannot be undone. The sound of the tree creaking echoes across all worlds. It is not a gentle sound. It is like a vast ship grinding against stone, something too large to hold together any longer. Mountains shake. Deep underground, the dwarfs feel it too. In their carved halls, dust falls from the ceilings. Their lamps flicker. Some whisper in fear at their doorways, knowing that the age of craft and creation is nearing its end. Near the frozen reaches of Niflheim, a hound begins to howl. His name is Garm. He is chained before a cave, or perhaps a jagged cliff. His chest is stained dark with blood. His eyes burn with a wild light. Each time he pulls at his bonds, the chains scrape against stone. A sound like cracking ice. Some later stories would blur his image with that of Fenrir. But here, he is his own terror, a guardian and a warning. His struggle means the barriers between worlds are weakening. In Midgard, the few humans who still live begin to sense it. They walk carefully, as though the ground beneath them might break at any moment. The old stories, once told for comfort beside the fire, now feel heavier. If Baldur, the best of the gods, could fall, what chance do they have? And yet, even here there are whispers, that somewhere, hidden within the vast body of Yggdrasil, a man and a woman will survive. That life will endure. But for now, it is only a rumor, a fragile hope carried by storytellers unwilling to end the tale in darkness. In Asgard, Odin watches. He has seen all of this before, in fragments, in visions, in the price he paid for knowledge. The endless winter, the darkened sky, the cries of roosters, the trembling tree. It is no longer prophecy. It is happening. The end is no longer distant. It is here, in the air, in the ground, in every sound. And soon, those who have waited at the edges of the world will begin to move. The great winter does not end with thunder. It ends with breaking. Deep beneath the earth, Loki still lies bound, until the moment everything changes. The serpent continues its slow torment. Sigyn continues her endless vigil, catching venom in her bowl. But each time she turns away, even for a heartbeat, the poison strikes. And Loki rides. For years, the earth has shaken in brief, violent bursts. Humans feel them, but do not understand them. Now, during Fimbulwinter, the tremors grow stronger, more frequent, more violent. The chains that bind Loki were made from the remains of his own son, hardened into iron by divine will. But even iron weakens, even stone cracks, even the world grows tired. And then, it happens. Sigyn turns away once more. The venom falls, and Loki, filled with all the rage, grief, and hatred he has carried since Baldur's death, strains against his bonds with everything he has left. The chains groan, the iron bends, and with a sound like the breaking roots of the world tree itself, they snap, the stones shatter. For the first time in ages, Loki is free. He lies still for a moment, almost disbelieving, feeling his limbs unbound. The serpent recoils above him, its venom dripping uselessly onto bare rock. Sigyn stands nearby, holding the empty bowl. The stories do not tell what she chooses, to stay or to leave. They only say this. Loki rises, but he is no longer the figure who once laughed among the gods. Venom has marked him. Loss has hollowed him. What remains is sharper, colder. He has lost his sons. He has endured endless torment. He has listened to the distant echoes of Asgard's life continuing without him. And now, as the world shakes and the sky lies dark, he smiles, not with joy, but with purpose, and he begins to move. Far away, on an island surrounded by dark waters, another force stirs. Fenrir, the chain that binds him, Gleipnir, is no ordinary thing. It was woven from impossible elements. The sound of a cat's footsteps, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, and the spit of a bird. No force had broken it. Until now. The sun is gone. The sky is failing. Yggdrasil trembles. And even the strongest bonds begin to weaken. Something vast is about to break free. The waters of the lake surrounding Lyngvi did not lie still. They churned restless, as if something beneath them had begun to wake. Fenrir felt it, not just in the trembling ground beneath his paws, but deep within himself. The hatred that had burned quietly since the day Tyr lost his hand now rose like a storm breaking loose. It was no longer contained, no longer distant. It was here. He pulled against Gleipnir. Once, that thin ribbon had seemed unbreakable. It had held him through years of rage, through prophecy, through the slow grinding weight of time. Now it cut into his flesh, into fur, into muscle. The stones anchoring it groaned as they dug deeper into the earth. The sword forced between his jaws bit into his gums and tongue, drawing blood that mixed with foam and spilled into the waters below. The river had long carried his saliva. Now it carried his fury. And then, the impossible happened. Gleipnir did not snap like rope or chain. It unraveled. The very things that made it whole, the impossible elements that defined it, simply ceased to bind. Fenrir surged upward. The sword fell from his mouth, clattering into the water below. He rose to his full height, vast, towering, his body shaking as he freed himself at last. Blood scattered from his jaws in wide arcs, each drop striking the ground with a hiss, as though the earth itself recoiled. He lifted his head, and he breathed. In that breath, he tasted everything: ice, fire, fear, the salt of distant oceans, the dry dust of giant halls, and above all, the bitter, familiar scent of the gods. Without hesitation, he turned toward it. In Niflheim, another chain broke. The hound Garm, long bound before a cave of shadow and stone, tore free. His massive chest, already stained with the memory of old battles, heaved as he shook himself loose. When he howled, the sound did not stay in one place. It traveled, through caverns, through roots, through the hollow spaces beneath the worlds. It was not just a cry, it was an opening. Whatever he had once guarded was no longer meant to be contained. Far beyond, in the vast ocean that encircles Midgard, something ancient stirred. Jormungandr. For ages, the great serpent had lain coiled around the world, tail clasped in his own jaws. A living circle beneath the waves. He had watched ships pass above as faint shadows, felt the slow pulse of tides, endured the crushing weight of ice and time. But now, the force that held him closed began to loosen. Slowly, deliberately, he opened his mouth. His tail slipped free. The circle broke, and as he began to uncoil, the seas answered. Water heaved upward. Waves rose into walls. His head emerged first, then his neck, then endless coils of scaled body following after. The ocean roared as if it had found a voice. Coasts vanished beneath surging water. Ships were lifted, shattered, thrown aside like driftwood. From his mouth, venom dripped. Some say he spat it into the air itself, poison spreading like a mist across land and sky, turning breath into something deadly. For those who had always feared the sea's sudden cruelty, this was that fear made vast, unavoidable, alive, and elsewhere, far to the edges of the world, another force gathered. In the cold reaches of Jotunheim, giants stood beside a ship unlike any other. Naglfar, the ship of nails. No hammer had built it. No craftsman had shaped its hull. Instead, it had grown slowly, silently, formed from the untrimmed nails of the dead. Every neglected burial, every forgotten rite, every moment of carelessness added to its size. Finger by finger, toe by toe, by the end of Fimbulwinter, it was complete. A massive vessel, built from the smallest, most overlooked parts of human life. Some later voices would turn this into warning, telling the living to trim their nails, as if such small acts could delay the end. But the deeper truth remained. Neglect has consequences, even in the smallest things. Now, the giants pushed Naglfar into the dark sea. At its prow stood a figure. Some say it was a giant, Hrimr, Lord of Frost. Others say it was Loki himself, newly freed, hands upon the helm, guiding the ship of the dead toward its final destination. Whichever is true, the result is the same. The decks filled. Frost giants climbed aboard, their breath steaming in the cold air, their eyes burning with anticipation. From Muspelheim came another host. Fire giants. They marched beneath a sky that still burned red in their own realm. At their head strode Surtr, the Black One, bearing a sword brighter than any sun. Flames clung to his blade. Each step he took left embers glowing behind him. Their path led to the Rainbow Bridge, Bifrost. Once, it had been a symbol of beauty, a shimmering arc connecting worlds. Now, it became a breaking point. As the armies of fire crossed, flames spread across its span. The weight of their march, the heat of their presence, too much. The bridge shattered. Colors split apart like glass. Light fell into darkness. And Heimdall watched. He had always watched. His sight missed nothing. His hearing reached beyond all others. He heard the grinding of Naglfar's hull, the march of Surtr's army, the trembling of the worlds themselves. And so he raised Gjallarhorn. When he blew it, the sound was not music. It was a single, endless note, sharp enough to cut through everything. Across all realms, it was heard. In Valhalla, warriors froze, then rose as one. Cups fell. Shields were seized. On the decks of Naglfar, giants grinned. In Hell, even the dead shifted in their seats. The sound reached everywhere, into mountains, along the branches of Yggdrasil, into every place that had not yet understood. Now they understood. In Asgard the gods stood. Odin heard the horn, and though he had long known this moment would come, the sound still carried weight. Not just danger, but finality. The waiting was over. He moved without hesitation. He saddled Sleipnir, his 8-legged steed, and rode. Not to battle, not yet, but to the roots of Yggdrasil, to the well of Mimir. There, in the lands of giants, the severed head of Mimir still guarded ancient wisdom, preserved by magic, untouched by decay. Long ago, Odin had given an eye for a single drink from that well. Now, at the end of all things, he returned. The stories do not tell what passed between them, only that Odin spoke and listened. Perhaps he asked if fate could still be changed. Perhaps he already knew the answer. When he rose to leave, his face was set. There would be no turning aside. Back in Valhalla, the Einarjar gathered. For ages they had trained, fighting each day, healing each night, feasting without end. It had seemed like eternity. Now it was preparation fulfilled. They armed themselves. The halls of Valhalla opened. Hundreds of doors, each wide enough for entire ranks to pass through at once. Warriors poured out in numbers beyond counting, armor gleaming, weapons ready. Not for sport, for war. The gods prepared as well. Thor fastened his belt, Megingjr, doubling his strength. He pulled on iron gloves and gripped Mjolnir, the hammer that had shattered countless foes. His chariot stood ready, drawn by his goats, their hooves striking sparks as they stamped against the sky. Tyr, one hand gone, lifted his shield with the other. No one spoke of fear, but all of them knew. This battle would not be like the others. This time, the end had already begun. He knew his path would lead him to Garm, the blood-stained hound, and that neither of them would leave that meeting unchanged or alive. Freyr, meanwhile, returned to his hall. He called for his boar, Gullinbursti, whose golden bristles glowed even in the dim light of a dying world. The beast stamped the ground, ready for war. But when Freyr reached for his sword, the blade that once fought on its own, striking with a will beyond its wielders, his hand closed on nothing. He had given it away, long ago, for love, for Geir. What once felt like a victory now returned as a debt. Freyr did not hesitate. His jaw tightened. He took up a lesser weapon, some say an antler, others a simple blade, and turned toward his fate. He would face Surtr without the weapon that might have saved him. Frigg moved quietly through the halls of Asgard. She looked upon the faces she loved, knowing, without doubt, that many would be gone before the end. Once, she had tried to protect Baldur by binding the world itself in oaths. It had not been enough. Now there was nothing left to bind, nothing left to promise. The storm was already here. Around her, the other gods prepared in their own ways. Heimdall placed Gjallarhorn beside him once more and lifted his sword. Bragi, the god of poetry, armed himself for a battle no words could soften. Idun stood among her apples, the fruit that had long kept age at bay, and understood, at last, that even the gods could not escape time forever. When all was ready, they marched. Odin led them. From the shining heights of Asgard, the host descended into shadow. Bifrost was broken. The old paths no longer held. Some say they crossed unseen bridges. Others say they moved through the air itself. But the details do not matter. Only the image remains. A great host moving together toward one place. That place was Vigrid, a vast plain, endless, 100 leagues in every direction, empty and exposed. No walls, no shelter, no place to retreat, only space for the end. To those who had fought on narrow decks or in tight valleys, such openness would have felt unnatural, almost unreal, but it was fitting. There would be nowhere to hide. From one side came Naglfar, its massive hull ground against the edge of the battlefield like a beached beast. Frost clung to its planks. Ice drifted in broken slabs beside it. Its decks were crowded, with giants, with the dead, with warriors pulled from every shadowed corner of existence. Weapons glinted in their hands, some ancient, some newly taken. From another side came Jormungandr. His vast coils churned the sea into chaos. Waves crashed onto the edges of the plain as his body shifted beneath them. Where he moved, the seabed tore open, leaving scars that would one day become rivers and chasms. His golden eyes scanned the battlefield, waiting. From the burning realms came Surtr and the armies of Muspel. Their presence turned the darkness into a living furnace. Each step sent sparks across the ground. Each breath shimmered with heat. Surtr himself towered above them, his blade casting a light brighter than the sun that no longer existed. From the shadows and broken stone came Fenrir. He moved like a storm-given form. His shoulders rose higher than the greatest halls of Asgard. Frost clung to his fur. Blood marked his jaws. Foam dripped from his teeth as he ran, each step shaking the earth. His eyes burned with memory, with betrayal, with hunger. And from the other side came the gods, Odin at their head, the Aesir in shining ranks. Behind them the Einherjar, countless warriors, shields overlapping, spears angled forward like a forest of iron. Their banners snapped in the cold wind. Their armor rang softly, in rhythm with their hearts. All of them drawn forward, as if by lines carved long ago into fate itself. For a moment, there was silence. Only the wind moved across Vigrid, dry and restless. It stirred ash where nothing yet burned. It bent the last dead grasses clinging to the earth. Above, the sky was empty. No sun, no moon, only a black vault, faintly lit by the glow of fire and steel. Then, Odin raised Gungnir, the spear that had never missed, forged in the earliest days, bright and terrible in his hand. He spoke words lost to time, words carried only in memory by ravens and wind. And then, he charged. Sleipnir surged forward, its 8 legs striking the ground with thunder. The gods followed. The Einherjar roared as one. Shields clashed. Armor rang. Voices rose in a wild chorus, the sound of warriors who had waited their entire existence for this moment. The enemy answered. Giants roared and struck their shields. The dead advanced without fear. Jormungandr reared, opening his vast jaws, venom spilling onto the earth with a hiss. Fenrir broke into a full run, and when the two sides met, it was like mountains colliding. The sagas do not dwell on every clash. They do not recount every strike. Instead, they draw our eyes to certain moments, points where fate itself gathers. And one of those points was Odin. He rode straight toward Fenrir. He had always known it would end this way. He had seen it in visions, in runes, in the depths of Mimir's well. But knowing is not the same as facing. As he approached, the wolf seemed to grow, his shadow spreading across the plain like spilled darkness. Odin lowered Gungnir. Above him, his ravens circled, uncertain where to land in a field that would soon be covered in death. Sleipnir thundered forward, and Odin, god of war, of wisdom, of kings, prepared to cast his spear one final time. He threw it. The weapon flew true, as it always had, but this was the end of all things, and the old certainties no longer held. Fenrir lunged. The spear struck, but did not stop him, and in the next instant, the wolf was upon him. His jaws opened wide, so wide that the old stories say his lower jaw scraped the earth while the upper reached toward the sky, as if he meant to swallow the world itself. His breath poured out, hot, foul, thick with the scent of chains and ancient hatred. And then, he closed his jaws. The sagas do not soften what comes next. They say only this: Odin was swallowed, whole, the Allfather, the giver of wisdom, the lord of so many stories, gone in a single brutal moment. Even in the chaos of battle, something shifted. A shock, a silence beneath the noise. The leader of the gods had fallen. His spear had failed. His knowledge had led him here, but not beyond. And yet, this is not the end of the story, because even now, it begins to turn. From within the shifting ranks of the gods, another figure stepped forward, one rarely given voice in the old poems. Vidar, the Silent One, son of Odin, yet unlike his father in nearly every way. While Odin sought knowledge in distant realms, Vidar had chosen stillness. He dwelled in deep forests where the trees grew so thick that light itself struggled to pass. It was said in quiet whispers that his strength rivaled even Thor's, but his power had never needed to prove itself. Until now, on one foot, he wore something strange. A single shoe, thick, heavy, and unlike anything forged in a smith's fire. The old traditions say it was made from scraps. Every piece of leather ever cut and discarded by human hands, every trimming from every shoemaker across time, had found its way to him. Slowly, patiently, over ages beyond counting, Vidar had gathered them. And from those forgotten remnants, he had crafted this one thing. Not just protection, not just armor, but purpose. Now he moved through the chaos of battle. No war cry, no command, no wasted motion. When he reached Fenrir, he did not hesitate. He leapt. His foot drove down into the wolf's lower jaw, forcing it against the earth. The great beast thrashed, but the shoe held, unyielding, unbreakable. Vidar seized the upper jaw with both hands, and pulled. The resistance was immense. Bones strained, muscle tore, but Vidar did not stop. With a final surge of strength, he forced the jaws wider, wider, until something gave. Some say he tore the wolf apart. Others say he drove his hand into its chest and crushed its heart. Either way, the end was the same. Fenrir fell. The jaws that had swallowed Odin were left hanging open, broken and still. For a brief moment, on the blood-soaked field of Vigrid, the silent sun stood over the body of his father's killer. But there was no time to mourn, no time to claim victory. The war was still raging. Near the flooded edges of the battlefield, where the sea had swallowed the land, Thor drove forward. He had faced Jormungandr once before. On that long-remembered fishing trip with the giant Heimer, he had hooked the great serpent with the head of an ox and pulled it from the depths. For a moment, the world had held its breath, the serpent rising, poison dripping, storm clouds gathering. And then, the line had been cut. The beast had escaped. That encounter had ended in frustration. This one would not. Thor stepped down from his chariot and waded into the churning water. Mjolnir gripped tightly in his hand. The sea foamed around him, rising with each step. Some say the waves reached his waist. Others say the ocean itself recoiled from his presence. Above, thunder rolled, though no natural storm remained in the sky. Jormungandr rose to meet him, massive coils twisting, head towering above the surf. The serpent opened its jaws and unleashed venom. It came as a thick, burning haze, spreading across the battlefield. Where it touched, armor blackened, flesh burned, warriors fell choking where they stood. Thor did not stop. He lowered his head and walked into it. Each step was will, each breath pain. The poison scorched his lungs, his skin, but still he advanced. Mjolnir felt heavy, heavier than ever before. But when he lifted it, the hammer still answered, as if it too had chosen this final battle. With a roar that cut through the chaos, Thor hurled it. The hammer tore through the poisoned air and struck the serpent with devastating force. The impact shook the world. Lightning erupted outward. Jormungandr's skull cracked. Its coils thrashed violently, crushing everything in reach, ships, giants, warriors alike. For a moment, both stood at the edge of death. Then, the serpent fell. Its massive body crashed into the sea, sending waves higher than any storm had ever known. But the venom remained, seeping, spreading. Thor staggered back. He called Mjolnir to his hand, and it returned, but slower than before. As if even distance had begun to change. He took one step, then another. 9 steps in total. On the 9th, he stopped. The poison had already claimed him. His strength faded. Mjolnir slipped from his grasp. And Thor, defender of Midgard, fell. Elsewhere on the field, tear-faced Garm, the god who had once sacrificed his hand to bind Fenrir, now stood before another beast of chains and blood. There are few songs about their battle, no long verses, no detailed telling, only this: they fought, fiercely, without retreat, and in the end, both fell. The god of oaths died as he had lived, bound to his fate. Freyr rode into battle atop Gullinbursti, his golden-bristled boar casting light into the darkness. But his greatest weapon was gone, given away long ago for love. Now, in its place, he carried something lesser, and before him stood Surtr, the fire giant, the end of all things. Surtr's blade burned brighter than any sun, each swing carved through ranks of warriors, leaving only flame and ruin behind. When the two met, it was like spring colliding with wildfire. Freyr fought well, swift, strong, but fate cannot be undone. Not on the final day. Surtr's blade found him, and the god of peace and prosperity fell. Heimdall and Loki found each other as well. Watcher and trickster, order and chaos. For once, there were no secrets between them, no hidden paths, no deception. They fought openly, and when it ended, both lay dead. Heimdall, having fulfilled his duty to the last breath. Loki, consumed by the destruction he had helped bring into the world. Across Vigrid, the same story repeated. Gods fell, giants fell. The Einarjar fought as they had trained for ages, but this time their wounds did not heal. Blood soaked the earth. The field that had been empty at dawn became a place of ruin. Above it all, Yggdrasil trembled. Its branches groaned, its roots strained. The Norns watched in silence. They still tended the tree, but now it was no longer to preserve it, only to honor what had been. And then, Surtr raised his sword, not against a single enemy, but against the world itself. When it fell, everything burned. Flames spread across land and sky. Forests ignited. Mountains cracked. The remnants of Bifrost turned to sparks. Halls of gods and men alike collapsed into fire. The earth itself began to fail. It sank. The seas rose, boiling, consuming, until nothing remained but fire, water, and the sound of everything ending. Then, silence, a deep, endless stillness. Time passed, uncounted, and from that silence, something returned. The earth rose again, green, fresh, untouched. A new sun appeared, the daughter of the one Fenrir had devoured, casting light across a world reborn. And in that light, figures walked. Vidar, Vale, the sons of Thor, Modi and Magni, carrying Mjolnir, which had survived the end. Baldur returned, and Hodr beside him, no longer enemies, no longer bound by darkness. Together again, they walked the fields where Asgard had once stood, and began to build anew. And far from them, hidden within the shelter of the World Tree, two humans emerged, Lif and Lifthraser. They had endured, through fire, through winter, through the end of everything, and now they stepped into the beginning. And so the flames faded, not with a roar, but with a silence so deep it swallowed even memory. The gods had fallen, the sky had burned, the world itself had broken and sunk into the dark. For a time there was nothing, no thunder, no voices, no fate left to unfold, only ash and stillness. But endings are never truly the end. From the quiet depths something stirred. A breath, a ripple, a beginning. The earth rose again, unscarred, untouched, reborn. A new sun climbed into the sky. Not the old one, but its daughter. Brighter, softer, unbroken. And in that light, the survivors walked. Not as rulers of a fallen world, but as witnesses of what comes after. The silence had changed. It was no longer the silence of death. It was the silence before life begins again. Because even after fire, even after the end of gods, the story continues.